Imagine this. A man is standing on a beach, holding a real sword, ready to kill. And his opponent? He's asleep, in a boat. 2 hours late, on purpose. And when he finally shows up, he's not even carrying a sword. He's carrying a boat, or he carved into a weapon on the ride over. Minutes later, the man with the real sword, the most feared swordsman in Western Japan, is dead in the sand. That man fought 61 duels in his life or death. He lost 0. And here's what everyone gets wrong. His sword skills weren't the weapon. His mind was. Musashi was winning fights before they started, hacking his opponent's minds 400 years before psychology was even a word. And when you break down how, it lines up almost perfectly with what modern brain science says about fear, anger, and performance. So in the next 10 minutes, I'll show you exactly how his mind worked. And at the end, the twist nobody talks about, why the deadliest man in Japan suddenly put down his sword forever. Let's go. Quick setup, because this matters. Japan, 1584. The country's been at war with itself for a century, and Musashi is born into the tail end of that chaos with nothing. No clan, no famous teacher, a harsh father he leaves behind in his early teens. A self-taught kid with a wooden sword. In his world, a masterless warrior, a ronin, had exactly one career ladder: duels. Challenge a swordsman with a name, win, and his reputation becomes yours. And there usually wasn't an after. These were real blades, a wooden sword swung hard enough to crack skulls. So understand what his record actually means. It isn't 61 wins. It's 61 times he bet his life. And collected. And keep this in mind. At the very end of that life, he sits down in a cave and writes it all down. We'll get there. But first, you need to see how a 13-year-old wins a fight to the death. Yeah, 13. It's 1596. And a traveling samurai named Arima Kihei rolls into Musashi's village and puts up a public sign, an open challenge to anyone brave enough to sign it. Some kid walks up and writes Musashi. Next morning, nobody's taking it seriously. A monk even shows up to apologize on the boy's behalf. Everyone expects the kid to kneel. Instead, Musashi charges. Mid-apology, no warning, swinging a 6-foot wooden staff. He throws the grown, trained samurai to the ground and beats him to death. That's the opening act of his career. Okay, freeze. Because here's principle number 1. Most fighters don't lose to their opponent. They lose to fear first. The opponent just finishes the job. And this is measurable. Research on stress and performance shows that when your brain detects a death threat, your vision narrows, your fine motor control falls apart, and your thinking brain goes offline. A normal person in a death duel is fighting at maybe 60%, battling their own nervous system and the guy in front of them. Musashi didn't seem to pay that tax. Even at 13, he walks toward death like a door he's already been through. He'd later put it in words. The way of the warrior is the acceptance of death. So complete that fear has nothing left to grab onto. And once he realized fear was the real battlefield, he stopped fighting men and started fighting minds. Around 1604, Musashi walks into Kyoto and challenges the Yoshioka school. These were sword instructors to shoguns. A nobody calling out the champ, his brother, and the entire gym behind them. Duel 1 versus the head of the school, Kojirō. The crowd gathers, Kojirō is ready, and Musashi doesn't show. 1 hour. 2. When he finally strolls in, Kojirō isn't a composed master anymore. He's publicly humiliated and furious, which is exactly the man Musashi wanted. Because psychologists have measured what anger does to decision-making. It makes you impulsive, makes you rush, makes you commit early. And in a sword duel, committing early is death. 1 strike, and Kojirō's arm is ruined so badly, he retires to become a monk. The school demands revenge. Duel 2, the younger brother. Musashi's late again. Same fury, same rushed attack, this time fatal. So for round 3, the Yoshioka stop playing fair. Dozens of armed men, set to ambush him the moment he arrives. And their whole plan rests on one assumption. He's always late. Except this time. Musashi's been hiding at the site for hours. He explodes out of cover, strikes down the air, draws both swords, the birth of his famous two-sword style, and cuts his way out. The most powerful school in Kyoto, finished by one man. Freeze. 2 principles. 1. He didn't fight opponents at their best. He created their worst state and fought that. The lateness was a weapon. 2. Once people think they've decoded your pattern, the pattern itself becomes the trap. That's not swordsmanship. That's chess. And 8 years later, he plays his perfect game. April 1612. By now, Musashi is the name. Except for one other, Sasaki Kojiro, the demon of the western provinces. His swallow cut was said to slice birds out of the air, and he wielded a sword so long, they nicknamed it the drying pole. That reach was his whole game. The duel is set on a tiny island between Honshu and Kyushu. Kojiro is there, early, polished, ready. And Musashi is asleep in a boat, miles away. Remember the opening of this video? This is that beach. This is that boat. 2 hours pass. Kojiro is on that sand, marinating. And after Kyoto, you know exactly what Musashi is doing. But the lateness is just move 1. On the ride over, Musashi carves the boat's spare oar into a wooden sword, a few inches longer than the drying pole. Kojiro's one great advantage, erased with a knife and driftwood. Move 3. He wades ashore with the morning sun directly behind his back, straight into Kojiro's eyes. Kojiro snaps. He rips out his blade and hurls the scabbard into the sea. And Musashi just says, "You've already lost." No winner throws away his scabbard. What happens next takes seconds. Both men strike almost together. Kojiro's blade slices through Musashi's headband. That's how thin the margin is. But the R comes down first. One blow. The demon falls, and then Musashi doesn't celebrate. He walks straight back to his boat and rides the turning tide out before Kojiro's students can react. He timed the duel to the ocean itself, at least. That's how the story's been told for 400 years. Run the list back. The lateness, engineered rage. The oar, advantage deleted. The sun, blinded. The taunt, pushed past thinking. The tide, exit secured. Kojiro prepared for a sword fight. Musashi prepared for everything else. So let's open up the machine. Everything Musashi did comes down to 3 pillars. And none of them are about swords. 1. He made peace with death. In his own book, he writes that the warrior's way is the resolute acceptance of dying. And that's not poetry. Fear is a performance tax. Every man who faced him paid it. Musashi walked in, tax-free. That's not a fair fight. That's an ambush, wearing the costume of one. 2. A state the Zen swordsman called mushin, no mind, acting without deliberation. Here's the wild part. Modern psychology rediscovered this exact state and named it flow. The psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi found that peak performance happens precisely when self-consciousness disappears, and action and awareness merge. That's mushin. UFC fighters and Formula 1 drivers pay sports psychologists to build it today. Musashi built it with life-or-death reps. 3. He refused to exist as a pattern. Kojiro had a signature move. The Yoshioka had a style, predictable. They'd shown the world their answer key. Musashi never did. 2 swords, 1 sword, an oar. Late, early. His only style was studying yours and deleting it. No fear, no hesitation, no pattern. Every pillar, a battle won inside his own head. Which raises one last question. The deadliest man in Japan at his absolute peak. Why did he suddenly stop? Because here's the part that breaks people's brains. After Ganryū Island, Musashi is 29, undefeated, standing on the summit. And what does he do? He stops. No more duels to the death. Instead, he paints. And he gets good. His ink painting of a shrike on a dead branch is considered a masterpiece of Japanese art. Today, calligraphy, sculpture, gardens. The deadliest hands in Japan spent 30 years making beautiful things. Then, at the end, the payoff I promised you. Around 60 dying, Musashi climbs alone into a cave called Reigando and writes everything down. The Book of 5 Rings, and days before his death, 21 rules, called the Dokodo, the way of walking alone. And buried in his writing is the sentence that explains his whole life. Once you truly understand the way through one discipline, you see it in all things. The duels were never the point. They were the classroom. The hardest one on earth, and what he was actually mastering, was his own mind. 61 men fought a swordsman. None of them realized they were fighting a philosopher. So what do you take from a man dead 400 years? One sentence. The fight is decided before it starts. By who prepared more, who controlled their fear, and who refused to be predictable. True on a beach in 1612. True in your next interview. If your brain likes this kind of thing, you're in the right place. This is Minds of History. We take the most fascinating people who ever lived and crack open their heads to figure out why. The events are in every textbook. The minds are the real story. So, write in the comments who we should dissect next. Best suggestion becomes an episode. Hit like if this earned it, and subscribe, so you're here when we open the next mind. See you in the next one.